the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
We are coming to you live from a government cabin in Troll Country in Norway. It's the Worldview Media Podcast. I'm your host, Gordon Runyon, and with me is co-host Joyce Runyon.
So you forgot who I was.
I was running through all the kids' names in my mind.
I guess it's official, you're old.
Yeah. You know what? The newspaper today, I don't know if you saw this. This is completely unrelated to the podcast, maybe. But the front page of the local newspaper, there was a picture of a guy that was in school when we were in school.
Mm.
Do you remember? Are you familiar with it? Did you see it?
Do I remember?
Your face looked like maybe you saw the picture when I was talking about it. Okay, well.
No.
So it's a guy that got arrested for getting in a fight and stabbing somebody.
Oh.
But we went to school with him.
And that was on the front page of the paper?
Yeah. And he looks like he's in his 70s. And he's like a couple of years older than me.
And he's not.
No. It's ridiculous.
Well, you know, maybe we actually look like...
You know, that does occur to me. That I think I'm over here laughing at this guy for looking old as the hills. Maybe people laugh at me too. I don't know.
You know, at least you're bringing joy.
Right. I'll be stabbing some folks too. All right, so we're talking about a movie called The Troll Hunter, or is it just Troll Hunter?
Just Troll Hunter.
You can find it on Netflix. It's a foreign film. It's made in Norway, and it's most of the dialogue is in Norwegian. Is that the name of the language?
Sure.
Whatever language they speak in Norway, that's what it is. And so there's English subtitles, and it's not hard to follow along. And in this movie, what you have is it's done in a kind of a sub genre of horror movies called found footage.
Oh, yeah. So it's a documentary-esque.
Yeah,
sort
we
of
just
film.
found this video footage, and we
Yeah.
didn't edit it. We just put it together, and here you decide what this is about.
Yeah.
Made popular by the Blair Witch Project way back in the day.
Yeah.
So, this movie follows three young, well, they're college-age
They're from Boulder.
filmmakers. And they're going to college in Norway, and they initially are trying to find a man that they believe is poaching bears, and turns out he's not poaching bears, he's hunting trolls, like actual trolls. And
Yeah.
trolls are real, and they're not the kind of half funny creatures that you run into in fairy tales. They're very dangerous and destructive, and so this guy, the troll hunter, turns out he's employed by the Norwegian government, and the government of Norway knows all about trolls and has for a long time, and they've formed a conspiracy basically to keep the public unaware of the existence of trolls in Norway. And so this guy is the one troll hunter in the nation, and his job isn't to just go around and kill them, but he kind of keeps them in line and makes sure they stay in their territory that the government wants them to stay in.
Yeah.
If some of them start causing trouble, then he'll go out and
Has to see what's going on.
them.
Yeah.
And so the movie kind of goes from there, where these three students decide to tag along with the troll hunter, and it becomes their mission that they're going to document this big secret that the government's been hiding from the people, and that's what they decide to do. And so they have a couple of different adventures dealing with different types of trolls, and and then at the end we're kind of left with the feeling that probably the government got a hold of the videos. They were, at least in the last scene, the government's chasing the students.
And people have gone missing.
Right. And now nobody's seen the students since that day.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the trolls that got them. It looks like it was the government that got them. And which then leaves you with the question, well, then how did the video get released?
Yeah.
I think the obvious answer is the troll hunter is the one who released them, since he works for the government and had some kind of access here and there. And he's kind of a sneaky guy.
Yeah. Well, he never goes to a government location. He's always out on...
Right. They'll disavow any knowledge of him, I'm sure. Okay. So that's the troll hunter synopsis. So let me ask you what you think. We just watched this last night and we haven't talked about it even a little bit yet. So I'm interested to hear what you thought of it.
It was really slow.
Yeah, there were a lot of slow points in it.
So that was kind of hard. Because it was very slow.
Yeah.
And, they wanted it to be like a documentary type thing.
Yeah.
But it didn't have quite a documentary type feel to it. Just with the way the camera work was going on all the time. And they'd be recording stuff that wasn't really recordable material. It was like they just put the camera on and forgot to turn it off, or so there were just some scenes that that didn't seem right for a documentary.
Well, they said they just showed the video without editing it. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, no, I mean, there's just scenes that... Why is the camera on for this scene?
Oh, okay.
What were you trying to capture that the camera's on? Yeah. Why? So there were some things like that for me that it just made it a little inconsistent.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting that they went into a lot of detail with the trolls and the different types of trolls, and how they come to be and what they do and where they live, and so that was kind of fun that there was a lot of development in that. It wasn't just like one lone troll going rogue out on the countryside. There were definitely different types and different areas where all these were supposed to be, and and then trying to figure out, well, what happened that everybody's kind of freaking out and not being where they're supposed to be, and then even the explanation for why trolls respond the way they do to light. I thought that was really kind of clever. With some of the things that they some of the myths things that they handled.
Yeah, they were trying to demythologize a lot of the troll myth and stuff. They were trying to give like naturalistic explanations for why trolls turn to stone in the sunlight
or explode, or
yeah. And I thought the troll stuff itself was mostly really good, just in terms of special effects and visual effects. I thought the trolls were okay themselves. You did get the sense that they were really dangerous. And stuff. But I'll tell you, my major gripe with the movie is I'm not sure they knew what kind of story they were telling.
Yeah.
Because it started out feeling like a horror movie.
Yeah.
And then
it could.
Yeah, like it could go to be a horror movie. and then it kind of took a turn toward maybe like just a fantasy action adventure.
Well,
We're
it
going
really
out to
couldn't be
hunt
horror
trolls.
because it's a PG-13. So just the rating itself, it's not going to be.
Well, no, but they weren't constrained by the rating when they started making the movie, though. I feel like they didn't know what they wanted to be because they started out one way, and I felt like they changed directions, and at times I felt like they almost wanted to be lighthearted at places and
Mm-hmm.
not at all scary and even kind of humorous here and there. And
Maybe that was to relieve tension.
well, I'm not sure there was that much built up to relieve.
Oh.
And so by the time we were done, I was kind of wishing that they had just set a course and stayed on it. Pick one.
Yeah.
Are you going to be lighthearted?
What is your focus?
Haha, we have trolls, and
Yeah.
and some of them are actually funny looking, and they didn't look like vicious monsters. Some of them didn't, even though they were obviously still really dangerous. Some of them look like creatures from like Fraggle Rock or something like that.
Yeah.
They made me just kind of wonder, what are you really seeking to do here? And I thought with the gloominess of the environment, the raininess, the mysteriousness of this troll hunter that they're following,
Yeah.
and the fact that after a little while, he's not hunting bears, he's doing something a lot more dark and sinister than that. I thought they could have mined that it could have been a much scarier story.
A little bit more intense. Well, and then it just all seems a little bit unlikely. You're following this guy who's a secret agent type of person, high security, and we want to talk to you. And he's just no. And then finally he's like, well, okay.
All right. Yeah.
I'm just going, I mean, they kind of found out some things just because they were following him.
Yeah.
But it was just that drastic flip in, well, yeah, let me just tell you everything, and you come along with me and we'll record all this, and I'm just tired.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he's very standoffish until he's completely okay with him hanging around.
Yeah. And then let me tell you everything I know. So.
Yeah. And that was actually funny when he finally admitted what was going on, and it turns out he's just paid by a government bureaucracy that doesn't really care about him, and he doesn't get any overtime or hazard pay or anything like that. He's just a kind of a poorly treated government worker, and he's kind
Isn't that the way of all
disgruntled.
government workers?
Yeah, and that bit I thought was kind of funny when they were going through that, but like I say, it went back and forth. There were times when it was tense, and times when you really understand they're running for their lives and stuff like that.
So but there were inconsistencies with the movie. It's not a bad movie. It's not anything. I don't think I would recommend it to someone because it's just really very specific in the genre and what it's talking about and what's happening. But it's all right.
You felt like it was all right?
Yeah.
What'd you give it? Like B- or something like that? Is that what you're...
I might give it a C.
C plus? C?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm in the C plus range. I don't think I would recommend it. I do think, as a writer and as a guy who's always kind of enjoyed both the fantasy genre and the horror genre, I think there's something there. You could either do an action adventure fantasy story set in modern day times, where a classic fantasy creature really does, without irony, without winking your eye at it and thinking about, well, how stupid is this? But if you had a fantasy creature like a troll or a goblin that gets set loose in a small town and starts wreaking havoc, that could be a real thing.
Yeah. They were pretty good about, if you look in the papers, you can see these unusual things that happen and relating those to incidents, troll incidents, and then going out on site and seeing trees that were broken down and, going all sorts of ways and not.
Right.
So they kind of did some things right, I think, but they also did some things that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, there were places where it was imaginative and you could tell there was some real thought given. I just didn't feel like the plot was one of those places.
Yeah. Well, it's a documentary. It's just what happens.
Yeah, and the other, I think it was apparent, the other limitation of the genre, if you're doing this found fiction or found footage genre, really hard to get any character development going, or a story arc for this character and a different story arc for this character. Really, really tough. I don't feel like we got a story arc for anybody.
No.
And very little characterization going on through the whole thing.
Well, and the camera guy, you even hardly see.
Yeah, there's one of the students you don't see until he's right about to be killed.
You see him on the occasion, but
he never has a part to play or anything.
Yeah.
He's just the guy apparently holding the camera.
Well, you hear him talk every now and then, but yeah, there's just it was a nice try.
Well, there were admirable parts of what they tried to do. But like I say, I don't think I can forgive just the fact that after watching it, I'm still not sure what kind of movie they wanted it to be. Why adopt the found footage thing if you're not really going to do a scary movie or,
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to be bound by that, but it would seem like the reason they adopted that is to make everything seem very immediate and very unplanned and extemporaneous, But then, like you said, there were places where the plot just moved so slowly. You could just film this in a different way, Well, and then my biggest gripe again is, what are you,
Yeah, what are you trying to accomplish?
All right, you have anything overall to say? Anything else on this?
No, I think that's good for me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and stop and we'll take our break. We'll come back and talk more Worldview stuff. Be right back.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ, our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
We're back. Worldview Media Podcast, the most frivolous podcast on the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network.
Nice.
With me is my wife, Joyce.
Hello.
And we are talking about Troll Hunter, the Norwegian foreign film that you have to watch subtitles on.
Yeah, you can't just close your eyes and listen, because it won't help you.
I was watching that and listening to him talk.
Yeah.
In their crazy Norway language. And I was just, this bears no resemblance to anything close.
Yeah. Well, it's like a 5-word sentence and they talk for a bit longer.
Right. They're talking for 30 seconds and it translates to 5 words on the screen for what they're saying.
And I was like even listening for I should hear this word because it's a place and I should hear them say it.
Right.
So.
And then it's funny because in the midst of it, when they're going to say okay, they just say okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess some things, that's just the way it is.
That just translates right over.
Yeah.
So we know one Norwegian word.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And so Troll Hunter, like I said, I think we both agree that the film is kind of muddled in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Doesn't really have a clear direction, and it's inconsistent in the way it approaches itself, and so that's kind of difficult. And so I don't think it's terribly surprising that I feel like thematically it's coming from kind of a muddled place as well.
Mm-hmm.
They do try, like you mentioned, they do try to kind of naturalize the trolls.
Mm-hmm.
Make them so they're not so much fairy creatures, but there are real reasons for why they do what they do.
Yeah.
But not completely so, because...
Well, just somewhat. I mean, nobody can really get close to these trolls to see what's going on. They're supposed to live for a long time.
Yeah.
So nobody's really around to see all this stuff. So there's still quite a bit of unknown information about these creatures.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's true. But I guess the one point that interested me most is some of the mythology about trolls carries forward and is applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the mythology is not. Like, they don't wear clothes and speak in language that you can understand. So that doesn't carry forward from some of the fairy stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things that did carry forward is apparently the trolls can smell the blood of a Christian man.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
So the troll hunter, as he's agreeing to take the college kids out, he wants to make sure that none of them are believers, that none of them are Christians, because it's going to blow their cover while they won't get close to the trolls because they'll smell the blood.
Yeah.
Associated with believing in Christ, and they hit that note several times. It actually becomes a plot point.
Yeah.
And so it's a real thing that trolls smell believers differently than they smell non-believers. And then at one point they bring in a Muslim girl and they kind of wonder, is it going to be the same? Turns out it's not. It's just the Christian blood that they smell. So I thought some of that was interesting, the way they kind of played with that. But they're trying to naturalize the trolls, like we mentioned. They're trying to give a plausible physical explanation for why trolls turn to stone in the sunlight.
It's a lack of vitamin D.
Yeah, because they can't process vitamin D. And other things like why they will sometimes eat rocks, and they like eating charcoal and hiding under bridges and stuff like that. Yeah. They have all these naturalistic reasons for stuff like that. But then there's no naturalistic explanation then for why they would be especially enraged when they smell the blood of the believer.
Yeah.
And there was really kind of one dark scene where the troll hunter goes to lure a troll out of hiding by, like you would lure a shark by throwing out chum.
Yeah.
Except he throws out like a gallon bucket full of what he says is the blood of a Christian man. Mm-hmm. It makes you wonder, how dark is this government, and what are they doing in
It's
order
probably
to...
just a blood bank.
And it does work, and it enrages the troll, and he comes out, he smells the blood of the Christian man, and then toward the end of the movie, the guy's going to lure the troll away from. He's trying to protect the kids by luring. He's going to lure the troll away.
Yeah.
And so in his truck, he starts blasting a Norwegian version of "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." And I thought that was really pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
Just in Norwegian. And this is obviously the tune. And you've got this 200-foot troll that's like clamping his hands over his ears. He can't stand to hear the Christian song.
That's funny.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny the way they did that. But it does speak to a kind of a muddle. You know, are you really going to demythologize them, or are you going to leave this one thing that there's really no naturalistic explanation for? And, well, they left that one mythology
Well,
intact.
but I think, too, they're... You know, when he's going out, he's not going out to reason with these trolls or to...
Yeah.
You know, it's not a catch and release type of thing that he's doing. And so even the interactions with the trolls are very limited and what they can find out during those times. So, you know, they're kind of figuring things out slowly. And maybe there is a reason, but...
Yeah. But naturalistically, though, there is no reason why faith would make your blood smell differently or something, you know. So anyway, I just thought that was
interesting.
An interesting bit of inconsistency.
Yeah.
And the other kind of thematic thing that was there, I'm not sure, I don't think it was maybe, is it a message they were trying to communicate? I don't know, but the whole story really shifts from here's a guy who hunts trolls, and yes, trolls are real. Mm-hmm. It really turns into a story about what the government's doing.
Yeah.
Under the guise of protecting its people, it's actually doing some pretty dark stuff.
I was wondering if there was some kind of connection between the trolls themselves and the government. You know, this monster that you think isn't real, and it's reaching out into all these places where it shouldn't be, and harming the countryside, and just could there be some sort of analogy between the troll, the dark troll that nobody knows, and yet it's out there, and the government is also a dark troll somewhat in itself.
Oh, so you're saying the government is the real troll in the story. Very interesting. I hadn't thought about that. But like I say, the movie definitely does shift in that direction. Where, without saying it, it becomes obvious that the real threat is from the government. And what it's doing, you know, like everything the government does, it masks it behind, well, we have to protect our people.
Care and concern, and this is the best for the most. And
right, and then it turns out we're left to believe that the government murdered these kids who had filmed all these things.
Yeah. Well, even the troll hunter says, you know, they wanted to build tunnels, and we kept trying to tell them, no, you can't build them here, but they wouldn't relent, and so I had to go in and wipe out all the trolls that were there because it was a territory. So every single troll that was there had to be massacred. Yeah. And so I think even if you look back on American history, you see that the government has treated its own citizens in horrific ways for whatever reason they feel was necessary to do that.
For safety and security.
And
doing things like spraying cities with radioactivity just to see what it does.
See what happens, and trying out diseases on people. And
shoot diseases into prisoners, black prisoners especially, to see what happens.
And so it occurred to me, is there some sort of similarities between this government who starts off at the front looking like, well, we're just here trying to help you, and then it just kind of unravels, and that's when you see the big giant troll at the end, and then who shows up after that? You know, it's the government.
Yeah, the big giantest, the most giant troll that could destroy everybody, they get rid of him, and then it's the government that comes in and actually kills everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think just in terms of what the movie presents, I think your interpretation there is really insightful. I think I'd have to go along with that. I think you're right.
Always a tone of surprise.
And I'm in favor of like every movie that shows government being this sinister thing that will kill you for the sake of protecting you. I'm all in favor of that. Let's have all those movies we can, and movies that show individuals courageous enough to stand in the face of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And let's have that as much as we can. So that message, I think, is in there, or part of it is. The standing up really isn't, not quite so much, but the bit about you do have an enemy in your midst.
Yeah.
And going to your metaphor, another part of it that makes sense to me is that the government in Norway had been telling the people for many years that that finding a bunch of dead corpses of farm animals, that's because of bears. And when you're driving along on the outskirts of a forest and you see a tree broken in half, that's because of tornadoes and stuff like that. And it's really trolls doing all this stuff. And when you drive through a place that you've been through before and one giant rock is in a different place than it was before, well, that's because trolls have been out there throwing big rocks at each other and stuff. And so the government's come up with answers that seem very plausible in order to hide the trolls. And so in your theory too, I think that government does that too. And we as a people have been trained not to notice,
not to question
that
those
bad things have happened, and it's got the government's fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
And then their explanations are so ingenious that when we see those things, our instinct as a people is to call for more government to address this.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that screwed it up in the first place.
Well, and I think in the very beginning of the film, they have all these animal attacks, and it's blamed on a bear. So somebody has to go out and
Kill an
the
actual bear. Yeah.
But they only have people from the government who are allowed to go out and take care of this. And that's why this poacher guy, he's big news, because he's going out and he's taking the shots on these bears. And so, that's handy too, that we have this massive problem that's a security issue, but we're the only ones that can deal with this. So we'll take care of it, and don't you worry.
And you're going to be in trouble if you try to take care of it yourself.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you have anything else, worldview wise or thematic wise?
No, I think you covered some of the things that I was thinking about with, just the Christian's blood and the music, and that was interesting.
Yeah.
That was kind of, what are you saying here?
It was kind of funny. I thought it was humorous.
And it's kind of, I don't know, mostly like in fairy tale type of stuff, there's not, God is not an entity in that. And so we have here some movie where it's fairy tale-esque, and yet God is there, but they're not wanting that there.
Nobody stops to say, well, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we have a little bit of time. We're a little bit short time-wise, and I wanted to maybe take a few moments to point our listeners at something that I think you and I have enjoyed. The fault for us watching this movie is actually we didn't go looking,
Yes.
We heard this movie recommended strongly on a podcast that we listen to and really enjoy. And I know that we have listeners who are creatively minded. We have listeners who write novels and are creative in the creation of fiction and stuff like that. And if you enjoy fantasy, especially books by Tolkien and the Harry Potter books, I recommend you check out this group called Point North Media. And you can find their podcasts just by searching for the individual names of the podcasts. And what they do, before I tell you the names, what they do is they've got their main guy is named Alistair, and he does what strikes me as kind of college level, university level analysis, chapter by chapter, of
whatever
these
book.
books.
Yeah.
And he himself is a writer. And so he's analyzing things like plot and characterization and storytelling and construction and background. And he's really analyzing just everything there is to analyze. It really takes pretty deep dives and stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it is he really enjoys the books that he's doing. And so you don't have to worry about, here's a book I like and here's a guy talking about it, but he's insulting my intelligence the whole time because he hates the book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going on. And so Point North Media, if you enjoy the Harry Potter books, he does some really in-depth
well, he's got
analysis.
stuff from Lord of the Rings. He has some Star Wars stuff. He's got a
Right.
lot of different genres.
He's a nerd, and happily so.
Yeah.
And so the Harry Potter podcast is called Dear Mr. Potter, and he'll tackle like several chapters in a session. I think most books take like 7 podcasts to work his way through, or something around there. And then the Tolkien podcast is called There and Back Again.
That's one of them. And then he does have one for Star Wars. He's got a lot of different things. He's done stuff with like Pride and Prejudice. He's done a lot of different type of genres.
Right.
So,
are you on his website? Or?
I am just in my library. So,
Oh, okay. But look that up. Point North Media. The guy's first name is Alistair. Do you know what his? I don't know his last name.
I don't.
He never says it. He's a British bloke.
it's been living in the States.
Right. And so it's a fun time. I'm not sure. I would guess he's not a Christian, but he's not hostile toward faith or Christianity. And so, he can still speak respectfully about things like Tolkien's obvious belief system and believing in a higher powers and stuff like that. And he can do that without freaking out or being upset about it. He's not terribly politically correct. I mean, he's got some going, but
but he really is just looking at the content in the books.
Yeah.
And I know, especially with the Potter series, because this was written by an English woman, that there's a lot of things that go with English literature types, which one is boarding schools, which we don't have that here in America.
The boarding school genre.
And so, that's a new thing for Americans to look at and think about. And so he brings to light some interesting information.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a fun listen.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, there's stuff that he does that drives me insane, but overall it's good. And so our retribution for him recommending this movie that we didn't like so much.
Well, it goes in line with what he was talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting pick for probably talking about some type of troll chapter.
Yeah.
But and it wasn't terrible. But it wasn't.
But now that we watch it and we've been listening to this guy a lot, you can say, oh, yeah, of course he would like that movie.
Yeah, and that's what I...
Yeah.
Well, of course, yeah, he's going to say this is a good one because of the mythology, and, here we see it here in modern day, and isn't this exciting, and... I'm glad he enjoyed it. It was interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And it wasn't terribly long, I guess, so that was the benefit of it.
Less than an hour and a half, I think. All right. Well, I don't have anything else if you don't have anything else, Mom.
You have nothing else?
Nothing else.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm tapped out.
Did you talk about your one stop?
I did not say that Reconstructionist Radio is your one-stop shop for all your audio dominionizing needs. But I'm not going to say that this week. I'll just
all right.
Change it up.
All right, then. Gotta keep it fresh.
All right, so till next time, 3, 2, 1, dominionize. Y'all that do the podcast with me, you don't catch on. You always stare at me blankly as I'm counting down.
Well, you never know.
In my mind, I see listeners shouting out when I get to dominionize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we all have our fictional tales we like to believe.
That's right. Creating your own catchphrase is a bit like giving yourself a nickname.
It reminds me of the Excelsior stuff, but I think that probably took off a little bit better.
Who did that?
Wasn't that Stan Lee with the Excelsior?
Stan Lee. Yeah, Excelsior. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to keep saying dominionize. And
maybe I'll join you someday. I don't know.
Well, eventually somebody's going to say it to you.
I think you say it a lot.
No, somebody you don't want to expect. Somebody you'll never expect it. Somebody will just say, "Hey Joyce, we should dominionize," and you'll say, "What the heck?" And then you'll know I have dominionized.
All right.
All right. Well, enough frivolity. It's time for us to be done. We'll see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.